On this Sunday night, an innocent family shattered by gunfire.
So many shots that night, all coming towards the house. So my brother took the first shot.
The demand for answers and justice from bystanders caught in the crossfire of a police shootout in Montreal. Escalation and retaliation in the Middle East.
There's not that many people on the streets. It looks like an emergency state.
As Hezbollah launches hundreds of rockets at Israel from Lebanon, with most shot down. The suspect in a mass stabbing in Germany surrenders. Was the killer radicalized by the so-called Islamic State? Plus,
my parents give us a big budget for back to school.
The counter trend to combat rampant consumerism.
It's hard for them to pay for rent and to still afford food.
The influencers making underconsumption cool.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin with a Montreal family's cry for help after being caught in the crossfire of a violent shootout between police and a suspect in Dollard-des-Ormeaux in the city's West Island earlier this month. A father of three and his eldest son were both shot in the parking lot of a residential complex while unloading their car after returning from a camping trip, as the rest of the family watched on in horror.
In the last 3 weeks, we have lived in a constant state of pain, fear, stress, anguish, and anger. What did we do to have our father and our brother shot and almost killed, and then handcuffed by the police while still bleeding on the ground, while bullets were still inside their bodies?
Quebec's police watchdog is now investigating. And as Dan Spector reports, the family is demanding answers and an assurance that something similar doesn't happen again.
And we are suffering.
Sirin El-Jundi and her daughter Jana Abdallah are confused, overwhelmed, and growing impatient. Their once peaceful lives turned upside down in the past 3 weeks.
A sense of being abandoned, I'd say.
On August 4th, the family of five was unloading their car after returning home to the Dollard-des-Ormeaux neighborhood from a camping trip. They allege a man tried to steal their vehicle. 26-year-old parolee Nikhil Hickey had allegedly been involved in an altercation in a nearby home before getting into a shootout with police while trying to flee. The Abdallah family got caught in the crossfire.
The blood of my father were on my hand. It's chaos, traumatizing.
Father of three Hussam Abdallah was shot 5 times as he tried to shield his children from the hail of bullets. His 18-year-old son Abdel Rahman was shot once.
I owe my life to him at this, forever.
When the shootout was finally over, Jana says her injured brother and father were both put in handcuffs as blood oozed from their wounds.
He's on the ground, bleeding out. There's no way he could be a danger to anyone at that point.
She says police only removed the cuffs from her father in the ambulance because a paramedic insisted. Her brother was in cuffs until he reached the ER.
This is the kind of issue that police ethics commissioner should look into in order to deem whether it was the right thing to do.
The family isn't certain, but they think they were shot at by the Montreal police.
Looking at the facts that I do have, that's where my brain is going.
Provincial police are now investigating the case, but the family says their many questions are not being answered.
What kind of weapons were used and how they were shot, from even what angle?
The father has had multiple surgeries and has faced several complications, including blood clots in his leg and lungs. Abdel Rahman is home but has trouble walking. 22-year-old Jana has put her studies at Concordia University on hold to take care of her mother and siblings.
I'm worried about him. I'm worried about my kids.
A friend has started a GoFundMe on their behalf. When they asked what kind of financial help they can get from the Crime Victims Assistance Center, they were told to ask their community for money.
It made her feel as if she was a beggar, We're not a family, that wants to beg.
The Montreal Police and the Sûreté du Québec would not comment, citing the ongoing investigation. The Independent Investigations Bureau could not be reached for comment on Sunday. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
The trains are set to roll again across the country tomorrow morning. The Federal Labor Board ordered employees at Canada Pacific Kansas City and Canadian National back to work after a 4-day shutdown. Getting the vital transportation system back on track will likely take several days, and this may not be the end of service disruptions. As Heather Yourex-West explains, the union is vowing to appeal.
You can't experience the Canadian Rockies through a screen. You have to be here with us.
It's a luxury tour by train that draws travelers from around the globe. But passengers of the Rocky Mountaineer this week were forced out of the dining car to eat roadside before finishing their trip on a bus.
The whole idea was to have Dad not walk very much, but now we were walking to and from the bus. We were just giggling because we're like, this is not quite the gold leaf service we signed up for the Rocky Mountaineer.
The tour operator had no other options after the labor action at CN and CPKC Rail shut down the tracks the Rocky Mountaineer operates on.
We received a ruling essentially granting the federal government permission to order us back to work. We will comply with this ruling from the CIRB, even though we are extremely disappointed.
It means after 4 days, the unprecedented service disruption at both Canadian rail lines will come to an end beginning Monday.
We anticipate that there will be rail congestion on the network, and we want to limit the impact as much as possible on our customers, especially students who are returning to school these days.
Montreal's transit system plans to have all of its trains operating with an additional bus shuttle service ready to go. Catching up from the work stop will take some time, with the potential of more unrest ahead.
Arbitration can sort of, put in place an arrangement for a few years and can buy us some peace. But arbitration can't really buy us a long-term resolution.
Big technological changes like automation have led to big changes across Canada's transportation industry, leading to labour trouble not just on the rails, but also at the borders, ports, and in the sky. It's why this week's disruption on the train lines may just be the latest in a series of disruption yet to come. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
And the rail workers' dispute will definitely remain an issue for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet, who are all meeting up in Halifax. Tonight, the federal ministers are kicking off their annual 3-day retreat there. Mackenzie Gray is also there covering the Prime Minister. So, Mac, let's start with that ongoing labour dispute. What is the latest?
Well, Sarah, the Liberals feel they have the rail issue under control with the trains running right now. Here's what they have to say about it.
This would have been an act of economic self-sabotage, which is what the Deputy Prime Minister called it, and obviously we're very relieved that that has been avoided.
Now, tomorrow, Sarah, they might run into a bit of a PR problem. The head of Teamsters here in Canada, has said he's coming to Halifax. He's encouraging other Teamsters who might be in the area to join him for picketing the Liberal cabinet meeting. We'll have to see, Sarah, what impact, if any, that has on the talks tomorrow.
Will be interesting. And Mackenzie, the railway dispute is just one of a number of challenges that are hanging over the Liberals, which could potentially cloud their political fortunes. What other key issues do we expect to be addressed at this retreat?
Well, the Liberals are dealing with both political and policy issues here. Let's start with the policy, Sarah. The Liberals announcing a small new housing measure earlier today.
The federal government is the largest landowner in the country.
And the Liberals are looking to leverage that by leasing out 56 federally owned plots of land to build new housing.
Long-term leases of up to 99 years for as little as $1 in exchange for a commitment from builders that they're going to make homes available at prices that low-income families can afford and that middle-class families can afford.
In total, the government estimates 25,000 units can be built through this program, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to the 3.5 million additional housing units needed by 2030 that the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says are required to restore affordability. And that is the crux of the political problem the government faces on housing and the economy overall. The solutions that they're providing, which experts usually like, will take years to impact the average Canadian. Time the Liberals and Justin Trudeau do not have, down 20 points in the polls to the Conservatives with nearly a year before an election.
It remains to be seen whether the public wishes to listen to the messenger that is the Prime Minister, because people have lots of predefined views about him.
The Prime Minister and the rest of Cabinet will be hearing from experts on housing and the economy, as well as Canada-U.S. relations. And there was a surprise last-second attendee today here, Sarah. Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden's national security advisor, flying to Halifax. Here's what he said he discussed with Cabinet.
So this isn't about me coming up here for a particular specific ask or on a single issue, it's a mark of the seriousness with which we take staying on the same page with our Canadian counterparts at all levels.
And tomorrow we'll likely hear from Justin Trudeau at a press conference, the first time he'll take questions from reporters in 2 weeks. Sarah?
Mackenzie Gray in Halifax. Thanks. In Germany today, a special church service was held in the western city of Solingen to honor the victims of Friday's deadly mass stabbing at a crowded street festival. The festival was meant to run all weekend, but it has since been cancelled. Instead, locals gathered today to mourn the 3 dead and 8 injured, placing flowers in memory of 2 men and a woman killed in a market square where bands were playing as people celebrated the city's 650-year history. Police say the suspect stabbed festival goers at random and that he deliberately aimed for their throats. Police announcing today that a 26-year-old Syrian national turned himself in and confessed to the crimes. Germany's federal prosecutor says the man is under investigation for murder, attempted murder, and membership in a foreign terrorist organization. On Saturday, the so-called Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. Authorities are looking into whether the suspect has any direct links to the terror group. The Syrian national is believed to have been living in a refugee shelter and had applied for asylum in Germany just prior to the attack. A Russian billionaire under arrest. Coming up, the head of a popular messaging app is detained at a French airport. The accusations he is facing. Just after the break. Fears of a new wave of attacks by the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah on Israel came to bear today. This after Israel assassinated a senior commander of the Iran-backed group, one that Canada considers a terrorist entity, last month in Beirut. Overnight, Hezbollah launching more than 320 rockets at multiple sites in Israel, as well as multiple drones. That triggered an immediate response by the Israeli army. It deployed 100 fighter jets, which apparently destroyed several rocket launching sites. Redmond Shannon on the latest round of violence between Israel and its northern enemy and the implications for the broader conflict, including the crisis in Gaza to the south.
According to Israel, it struck first Sunday morning, using 100 fighter jets to hit Hezbollah rocket launch sites inside Lebanon, half an hour before the Iran-backed militant group launched what it says were hundreds of rockets and drones toward Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says most were taken out by Israel's Iron Dome aerial defense system. But the owner of this house says there is no security in the north of the country, adding that she believes Hezbollah must be finished off. By some estimates, the group has over 100,000 missiles and rockets. Its leader Hassan Nasrallah says Israel's version of events is a lie and that Hezbollah's attack went to plan, hitting Israeli military targets. He and Netanyahu both say more strikes could follow. The large-scale attack had been anticipated for weeks after Israel's killing of a Hezbollah commander in Beirut last month. The claiming of a victory by both sides, somewhat reminiscent of Iran's direct attack on Israel in April, where almost all of the rockets were intercepted. The almost empty beaches of Tel Aviv reflect a 2-day state of emergency in Israel.
Pretty much everything is closed, the washrooms are closed, there's not that many people on the streets.
And in Beirut, many travelers were stranded after the cancellation of flights. Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire across the Lebanese border since last October's Hamas attack on Israel from Gaza. Hamas says Israel's military operation since then has killed more than 40,000 Gazans. An Israeli-Hamas peace deal is most likely key to any de-escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. But on Sunday, Hamas said it rejected Israel's latest conditions for a ceasefire. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
In Ukraine, a hotel in the eastern Donetsk region where a 6-person Reuters crew covering the war was staying was hit by an apparent Russian missile strike on Saturday. A member of the Reuters team was killed in that strike. The attack happened in the eastern Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk and completely leveled the Hotel Sapphire. 2 other journalists are being treated in hospital for injuries. The 3 remaining members of the team have been accounted for. French authorities have arrested Russian-born billionaire Pavel Durov. Durov is the CEO of messaging app Telegram, which is highly popular and influential in Ukraine, Russia, and the republics of the former Soviet Union. The 39-year-old was arrested after his private jet arrived in Paris on Saturday. Durov faced court in the French capital today after being detained following an investigation into his encrypted messaging service and a lack of moderators. He's accused of failing to curb the criminal use of his platform and for not cooperating with police investigating the exploitation of children, fraud, drug trafficking, and individuals promoting terrorism. There is an escalating fire emergency happening in Brazil tonight. More than 30 cities in the state of Sao Paulo are now on high alert as deadly wildfires spread across the region. At least 2 people have now died from the flames. They have mostly impacted rural areas, but have also shrouded the cities in a heavy haze. A prolonged drought and heat wave are fueling the fires, and government officials warn strong winds in the forecast could only make the situation worse. Ahead, what is fueling the so-called underconsumption movement and how living within your means is coming back in style. Social media influencers have become a significant driver in the global economy, so much so that major companies are foregoing traditional marketing to partner with content creators and connect with their followers. That's resulted in a rise of consumerism in recent years, but there's a new trend gaining steam on the socials that's making mindful spending on trend. Here's Anne Gaviola.
Underconsumption core, according to Ducky Delight, being happy with just 1 drink tumbler, and a less is more approach to skincare and makeup. Julie George rewears her outfits, invests in high-quality pieces, and only has 2 purses.
Huge back-to-school haul. Disclaimer, my parents give us a big budget for back to school.
So-called underconsumption core is the antithesis of big shopping hauls like this one from Kaylee Jolly, who has more than 122,000 followers. The pandemic led to the rise of the super influencer, whose business depends on consumerism. But now the fervor around post-COVID revenge spending has diminished. Households are cutting back.
It's hard for them to pay for rent and to still afford food. And a lot of them are cutting back on dining out. And so they really have to be more mindful and cautious of where they are spending their money.
Underconsumption core comes on the heels of trends like loud budgeting, where living within your means is glamorized, or at least less stigmatized, and challenges to avoid buying things in a given month. A reflection of the cash-strapped reality for many young people.
Young adults who are facing high rates of unemployment, or they aren't able to get a summer job or to work part-time, they're kind of taking a step back to think, do I really need to make all of these frivolous, impulsive purchases?
Is underconsumption core a passing fad or a sign of a real shift in spending habits and a lasting economic slowdown, fueled by satisfaction with just 1 drink tumbler instead of a collection? Sarah?
Anne Gaviola in Toronto. Thank you. With the U.S. presidential election just over 2 months away, donations for the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, continue to pour in. The vice president's campaign says it has now raised $540 million since launching just over 1 month ago. Former President Donald Trump has also been a formidable fundraiser, but he appears to be outpaced by Harris. Trump's campaign says it has raised about $327 million as of August 1st. Next, paying it forward through play. The Olympian giving back to kids on the court. Stay with us. This Babe Ruth jersey from almost 100 years ago is now the most expensive item of sports memorabilia ever sold at an auction. It sold in the U.S. for just over $24 million, almost doubling the previous record. Ruth wore this shirt during Game 3 of the 1932 World Series when he called a shot by pointing towards the crowd right before hitting a home run to help the New York Yankees clinch the World Series. Well, hockey might be Canada's sport, but so too is basketball. There were 27 Canadians on an NBA roster at the start of last season, a record for our country. Among those players is an unlikely and unique talent from Montreal. And as Mathilda Chironnet reports, he's working to inspire the next generation of Canadian basketball talents.
He is a bit of a legend in Montreal. NBA player Logan Stort was back in his hometown on Sunday to show the kids some tricks.
We did many exercises and it was practical.
Dubbed Lou the Beast, he has been the star of an annual camp by the same name where kids can learn from him.
I just love interacting with the kids. You know, I really believe in the next generation, and I feel like we have a lot of talent here in Montreal, Quebec. So, you know, whenever I got time to come back to give back to them, I'll do it.
A second-generation Haitian Canadian, Dort grew up in Montreal North and trained in Park Extension and the West Island.
I was Lou high school coach when he was in Montreal.
He now plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
It's no longer a dream for a kid in Montreal who dreamed to be in the NBA, so Lou made it. There's a couple of other Montreal guys that made it too.
He is visiting home after playing in the Paris Olympics.
It was really good to be part of history, one of the best teams from Canada, in the history of Canada to be in the Olympics.
Those attending cherish the opportunity.
Basketball is like a part of me. I feel like I can make it too because he's from Montreal and I'm in Montreal too.
His advice?
You just got to spend a lot of time in the gym and you got to believe in your game and you can get to a professional level.
But for now, the kids' priorities are elsewhere.
For sure I'm going to try to get a signature from Lou Dort.
And she sure did. Mathilda Chironnet, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Sarah McDonald. Tonight's Your Canada is Waterton Lakes National Park, Alberta. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Jeff Semple will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.